With a tagline like friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, you'd expect nothing but goodness out of Peter Parker. Don't get us wrong, Spider-Man has risked his life countless times to protect and defend humanity, but not every single time. We know it's hard to believe, so we are here to show you how Spider-Man has gone villain at times. He should have gone superhero.
Give me rent. You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
Before we begin the countdown, take 5 seconds to click on the red subscribe button and the bell underneath this video. That delivers you daily notifications to your inbox every time we post a new CBR video. Being Team Iron Man in Civil War. 2006 was a very intense year for the Marvel comic book universe. The superhero community, and to a degree the world, was being torn apart by the Superhero Registration Act. The Avengers in particular were hit hard by this game-changing legislation. The superhero squad had been supporting one another and fighting side by side for decades. While they've had minor conflicts with one another, they've always worked it out. The Superhero Registration Act would be too high a wall to scale for the superheroes to meet in the middle. Even for the web-slinging, wall-crawling Spider-Man, he wouldn't be able to overcome this one. Given the choice of revealing his identity to the world and siding with Iron Man, or keeping Peter Parker a secret and joining forces with Captain America, Spidey chose Team Iron Man. It was a shocking choice. When Spider-Man's nemesis found out his real identity, it led to the death of Gwen Stacy. So why would he make that choice again? Even worse, the decision to be on Stark's side of the Registration Act meant having to be a part of hunting down superheroes who didn't comply. This includes having to pursue Captain America, his old Avenger teammate and friend. Granted, Spidey switches sides eventually, but was it too little, too late? Bringing Venom to Earth. Spider-Man bringing Venom to Earth is one of the worst things he's ever done. The consequences of this action have rippled throughout the Marvel Universe and resulted in countless deaths and active chaos. There's no one to blame for this one other than our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. During Secret Wars, we learned that Deadpool was the first enhanced human to come across the alien symbiote suit. Shortly after putting it on, Wade Wilson realized this was not your normal piece of costume clothing. It was alive and interfacing with his brain. If Deadpool could figure that out within minutes, why wasn't Spider-Man able to do the same thing? Just like Deadpool, Peter's costume was damaged and he needed a new one. That black and white suit was not just a regular suit. Didn't he find it strange that he suddenly had endless amounts of webbing and without changing clothes could shapeshift into street clothes? Spider-Man was selfish in this regard, and rather than take it off like Deadpool, he brought it back to Earth. He went on wearing it for far too long before going to Reed Richards to have the suit looked at. The rejection the symbiote felt by Peter after using it for so long and then casting it aside directly resulted in the rise of Venom. The world would never be the same. Making a deal with the devil. Sometimes being a superhero means having to make alliances that you aren't necessarily proud of, but are needed at the time. This may mean calling a truce with your arch-nemesis in pursuit of a greater evil that you both have in common. It may also mean you making a pact with the devil. And we don't mean the figurative devil in this instance. We mean the literal devil, like in the case of Spider-Man. Because of his identity being revealed to the universe, it opened up Peter Parker to all new threats. In addition, it got worse when he decided to flip sides in Civil War. He and his family had to go on the run from both the government and his opponents. Kingpin found them, and while trying to shoot Spider-Man, hit Aunt May instead. It fatally wounded her. The demon Mephisto showed up at the hospital and offered a bargain to Spidey. If he and Mary Jane give up their marriage and love for one another, he would save Aunt May's life. There was no good choice in this situation, but making a pact with the devil doesn't really fit Spider-Man and all he stands for. In the end, Peter agreed to the deal with the devil Mephisto. Kills Gwen Stacy. The pressure of being a superhero is unrelenting. You can never just be a normal person who goes to the grocery store and likes to collect pictures of woodchucks. Even when you are off, you're on duty. And when you're a superhero, every decision can mean life or death. And not just your own life, but everyone around you. Spider-Man is one of those superheroes who is constantly under pressure and measures every decision. One of the most iconic storylines of all time is also one of Spider-Man's worst decisions. It results in the death of Gwen Stacy, whose only fault in all this was being Peter Parker's girlfriend. The Green Goblin abducts Stacy. There's a battle. During it, the Green Goblin throws Gwen off a bridge. Spider-Man has two choices in this moment: go after the Goblin or save his beloved girlfriend. He decides to save Stacy's life. Well, we should say rather than he tries to save her life. In shooting his webbing at her, he tries to break her fall. He catches her neck with it. The webbing's thrust was so powerful in combination with Gwen's momentum, she's killed. If Spider-Man had made a better decision or not put her at risk to begin with, Stacy would not have died on the bridge that day. Teamed up with Venom. Earlier in the video, we talked about the need of a superhero to make unsavory pacts with bad guys to do good in the world. However, we only make allowances for these relationships when it benefits the good of society. We can understand having to team up with, say, Venom to fight far worse evil to save the world. You'd understand, right? How would you feel if we told you Spider-Man made a pact with Venom? Venom and Spidey have called a truce in order to deal with the threat of carnage. That makes sense. Sadly, the pact we're talking about wasn't to save the world. In Spider-Man issue 375, Venom kidnaps Spider-Man's parents. In retaliation, Spider Spider-Man teams up with Venom's ex-wife. That doesn't feel like something a stand-up superhero would do, does it? Each character uses the other person's relatives as collateral. As a result, they both agree to leave the other alone. This agreement is a huge bonus of Venom. Instead of Spider-Man constantly pursuing him, he's gonna be left alone. This is completely misaligned with Peter's sense of responsibility and justice. That is not the action of a superhero in the making, but a supervillain. Attacking Daredevil. It should be unspoken that you never hurt another superhero, especially someone who's on your side and a longtime friend. In the death of Jean DeWolf's story arc, Jean is murdered by a serial killer called Sin Eater. Spider-Man took this loss particularly hard. Jean, who was a cop, was one of the few officers on the force who was kinda Spidey. His feelings of sadness and guilt only got worse when he discovered Jean had a crush on him that entire time. To make matters worse, Sin Eater decided to target Spider-Man by taking it to the next level. He tried to take out Peter's then-girlfriend, Betty Brant. This was too much. Spider-Man went on the offensive with Matt Murdock's Daredevil by his side. When they finally confronted the villain, Spider-Man started to take it too far. In his attack, he crossed the line from trying to take down Sin Eater to viciously attacking him. During this, Spider-Man veered into the dark side. When Daredevil tried to intervene out of concern for what he was seeing, Spider-Man turned on him. He punched Murdock through a window and kept attacking his partner. Thankfully, Daredevil's enhanced senses let him evade the punches, but Spider-Man dropped to an all-new low during this time. Worked for the Jackal. In the early 1990s, if you were a Spider-Man fan, one storyline stood out among the rest. The Clone Saga, or Spider-Clone Saga, depending on who you talk to, was a major story arc for our web-slinger. In the comic books, this arc lasted 2 years and considered one of the most controversial storylines of all time. In the early 1970s, when the original Clone Saga took place, the villain Jackal was introduced in the Spider-Verse. He would go on to attack and undermine Peter Parker every opportunity he got. When he resurfaced in the 1990s, he turned up the heat. Spider-Man had been acting a little weird right before the Clone Saga. He started calling himself the Spider and distancing himself from the superhero persona. When he found out he wasn't the real Spidey, he didn't take it too well. The Jackal convinced Peter he should work for him and fight alongside the other clones. A bold move, one would expect it to be turned down. Spider-Man working for a villain means he's also become a villain. No good can come of this. Shockingly, Peter agrees and becomes a minion of Jackal. As part of his villainous turn, he hunts his friends. Killed Charlemagne. Spider-Man has always been a superhero who prides himself in taking the high road in a situation. He doesn't resort to all-out violence or rage in the way, say, Wolverine or the Incredible Hulk can be prone to, which is why it's shocking when he crosses the clear line from fighting as a line of defense and protection to actively taking another person's life. In Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, which came out in February 1987, Peter crossed that line. It starts off with Wolverine finding himself behind enemy lines. He crossed over into Soviet Union territory in order to help out a friend who had been double-crossed. Peter gets involved in the storyline when he comes across a crying little girl. A series of events led both Wolverine and Spider-Man to West Berlin. They weren't exactly working with one another on this case, but kept crossing paths as Spider-Man kept interfering with Logan's dealings. During a big fight between Logan and Charlemagne, Spider-Man interfered. It was probably because he didn't want to see Logan kill Charlemagne. In the end, Peter didn't stop that from happening. He did the killing himself by punching her with his super strength. Whether he meant to, it doesn't matter. He crossed that line and can never go back. Becomes an assassin. In the Marvel Universe, many times a character has alternate versions of himself. This could be a result of time travel or interdimensional hijinks. One of Peter Parker's alternate versions dropped the superhero persona and went straight from the dark side. Peter Parker from Earth 8351 became a top Black Ops assassin. This version of our web-slinger was in complete opposition of everything his Earth 616 counterpart stood for. This version of reality picked up after the Spider-Man vs. Wolverine storyline. In the original story, Peter returned home to Mary Jane after killing Logan's friend. In this version, Peter decided to stay in Europe. He joins a group called the Nooooo and trains as an assassin. Rather than putting his abilities to good use with the Avengers, he trained hard to become a cold-blooded killer. This Spidey has no problem taking a life. In one shocking sequence, Spider-Man revealed that he doesn't have web shooters to take out someone. He has a gun where the shooters used to be and shoots the person at close range. Assassin Spider-Man lost all sense of humor and joy that were trademarks of his personality. Instead, he was much more serious. He stopped laughing and joking around. This transformation of his character and personality indicate a shift to a darker side. Corporate espionage. It seems like all the famous superheroes have their own companies and lines of technology or patents. Tony Stark is Stark Industries. Reed Richards is a genius scientist who develops patents. Even Peter Parker gets in on the business game. In Amazing Spider-Man issue 26, we learn Peter owns Parker Industries. His company markets itself as a global aerospace, defense, security, and advanced technology company. It emphasizes being interested in worldwide endeavors. At first, the company was doing good work, helping to rid the world of supervillains like Electro. Peter was using all his money, technology, and power for the betterment of society and not personal gain. That is, until Peter used his company in secret to undertake missions. He used Parker Industries as a cover story for entering the nation of Symkaria, where Norman Osborn was. His goal was to ultimately take out Osborn. Spider-Man tries to draw a moral equivalency by saying what he was doing was like Captain America in World War II, except back then they were at war, and no one is with Symkaria. Essentially though, his company, Peter, could be starting a war. That didn't seem to bother him. Instead of acknowledging what he was doing was not okay, he kept trying to justify it. Does that remind you of any supervillains? Yeah, we sure think so.
Gotta say, that's awesome.
We know how hard it is to think of Spider-Man as a supervillain, with all the good that he's done. Does this make you view Peter Parker differently now? Which act of villainy shocked you the most? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to CBR for more videos like this one in your playlist every day. Thanks for watching.